Hi, this is a tutorial on making a silicone mold of a small object. In this case, it's going to be a truss rod cover from a guitar, and we're going to make a silicone mold of it, and then we're going to make a replica of it in cast resin. Now, we're actually not going to make the mold because I made one in advance, but I'm going to walk you through the process. It starts with these items, which are available from Tap Plastics. This is a silicone part A and part B. It's a base and a catalyst, and you use equal parts of part A and part B. So the first step of doing this is taking the object that you want to duplicate and having a flat tray and making a form to put it in. And I've actually done this in advance as well. This is as simple as taking some stiff paper, which in this case I used pieces of a manila envelope cut into strips, and making a frame that's larger than the object that we're going to duplicate, and taping it to the flat surface. So you could use a cookie sheet for this. I just happen to have this piece of steel, and that's what I used. Then what you want to do is take the object that you're going to duplicate and set it in face up into the tray that you're going to put it in. So this is what we're going to duplicate. And the next step would be to take equal parts of side A and side B, the base and the catalyst, and you mix them together according to the instructions, which are not on the container, but they're pretty simple. Actually, if you buy this at Tap Plastics, they have instruction sheets there. I got them. It's more or less self-explanatory. So once you've mixed equal parts of this, you would pour them right over the top of this, and you would just set this somewhere flat, preferably, because when you make the duplicate, the flatter it is, the easier it'll be to make a level duplicate. I believe I set mine on a concrete floor when I did it. You could use a table with a bubble level. I've tried that method too. Anyway, so that's how this would be done. Mix equal parts, make a tray to put the part in, pour it in, and you give that, I believe, 24 hours to dry. It took about a day for it to dry. So now we're going to, now that we've done that, we're going to replicate this. This piece that I'm using as a sample is actually a duplicate, since I already put the original back on the guitar. So after the stuff you poured in is dry, and you come back a day later, it's going to look like this. Basically, you had your object in there, and you poured the silicone in, and the silicone is now solidified, and it's going to look like that. At that point, you take your form apart. You pull your object out of here, and you have a three-dimensional form of the original part. This is a mold release and conditioner. I found that using silicone on plastic, you don't really need it. I bought some at Tap Plastics, and I get to use it. So this is optional if you're doing this particular part. But mold release is good to have if you've got objects with intricate little designs in them. This one's pretty straightforward. So we're done with this. We're done with this. We're done with our paper form, and all we are left with is the mold, which I'm going to set in here. You can leave the cardboard form on it. I took mine off. I probably should have left it because it would have kept it stiffer. What I've been doing now, because if you just lay this in here, you run the risk of making a crooked part, but this is a flat surface here, so I just laid that up against the corner. So it might be a good idea to leave the paper form on. Anyway, the next step we are going to do, this is casting resin, also from Tap Plastics. This is the catalyst that activates the casting resin. This is white pigment, this is black pigment. Now this particular part is actually molded in a single color, and the lettering has been painted on afterwards. This is a pretty simple one to make. I did one that had where I actually poured the letters in black and then poured the color behind it. That was more steps, more processes, but the original object was made from a single color and had the letters painted on. So this is an example of one that was made that way, and that's what we're going to do today. Now, you start with a small cup. In this case, I've taken a drinking cup with a coated surface, cut it down to a small size, and formed a spout on it. That's to make it easier to pour. This was made from white, and we'll do black today. So we can do black with white lettering on it. So the first step is to follow the instructions on this, and the catalyst chart says that depending on the thickness, a thinner pour is going to require more resin, or more catalyst, I'm sorry, and thicker ones would require less because the thicker it is, the easier it catalyzes. And we're looking at 1/8 of an inch thick. That's about what we're going to be doing. And how many drops of catalyst per ounce of resin? This says 15 drops of catalyst per ounce of resin. I've done some with more, some with less. They will take longer to harden if you use less, but you do run the risk of shrinkage if you use too much. So it's flexible. You can do a little too much, you can do a little too little, it'll still solidify. So we'll err on the side of caution in this case. It doesn't take much to fill this particular mold. I'm going to say about an ounce. I'm just going to ballpark it. I would recommend measuring it if you're not sure, but I've been doing this by trial and error from the get-go, and I've figured out about what an ounce is. So that's about an ounce, and that's going to take about 15 drops of catalyst to solidify. But before we add the catalyst, because as soon as you add the catalyst, the hardening process begins, and it will take about 24 hours to dry, so you've got plenty of time. What we're going to do in this case is we're going to take this clear casting resin, and we're going to add pigment to it. So that one we made in white, this one we're going to make in black. And this is the pigment, and it doesn't take much of this pigment. The instructions on the bottle, which are very small and not easy to read, but they tell you to use the smallest ratio possible to get the color you want, and no more than, I think, a 20-to-1 mix. But again, this is available from Tap Plastics, and you want to follow the directions that are actually on the container. And I'm doing this from memory. I'm going to say it's about 20-to-1. Good idea to wear gloves when you're doing this. I never do, so I'm constantly cleaning up after myself because of it. So this pigment is like a paste, and it does go a long way. I've used it a couple of times, and I've barely tapped into it so far. So I'm going to take a little blob about that big, just a little dab, and mix that in. And again, we're putting the pigment in before the catalyst. And what we do is we got to start mixing it in. And it seems like it takes a while, but then you want to scrape the sides of the container. And in this case, I'm using a ballpoint pen as a stirrer, just because it's clean and it's got a smooth surface, and I can throw it away when I'm done with it. So as you can see, that clear became very black very quickly. I probably could have used even less than that, but it doesn't matter. It's good. If you used a very small amount, you could literally have a translucent black piece, but we're not going for that. We're going for a solid color. So on this one, we're going to make this, and we'll paint the letters white when it's done. Of course, this is going to take a day to dry, so I'll be shutting off the camera at some point and picking up where we left off. So now our resin is colored, but it is not catalyzed yet. Now I've taken the mold, and again, now we've laid it in here. We're laying it in with the open side up. And if you've used the mold before, you just want to clean it out, make sure there's no dust or foreign foreign objects in there. I made a couple of practice pieces, and then I made one for the instrument that I put it on. And I did clean it before I started, so just wanted to make sure there's no dust in there. Now, this is ready to go, and we're going to put our catalyst in. I'll close this container up here. So again, they say 15 drops per ounce. I think it might actually be, this is a half-ounce bottle. I'm going to say that's probably closer to 2 ounces. So I'm going to go ahead and mix it as though it were 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces. So we're going for 15 drops per ounce. So we're going to we'll do about 20, maybe 20, 25 drops. So just like this. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. So if I didn't use enough, it'll take a little longer to dry, but that won't matter for the purposes of the video because it's going to be sitting for a day anyway. So it'll take about a day to dry. Well, again, we're making sure when we stir this that we're scraping the sides, scraping along the bottom, getting it thoroughly mixed. It doesn't take much to get it mixed. I would say if you spend 30 seconds to a minute just stirring it, it'll go pretty quickly. But they do say not to stir it too quickly because the more you agitate it, the more likely you are to get air bubbles in it. The air bubbles will rise out, particularly if you have a slow catalyzing time. It'll have more time to release the air bubbles. And I usually will let it sit for a second before I pour it in just to see if I see any bubbles coming to the surface. There's a few in there. I probably could have stirred that slower, but it'll work. So now that we've done that, it's time to pour the mix into the tray, or I should say into the mold. And as I say, I formed this into a spout to make it easier to pour. And I'm going to try and do this in at a camera-friendly angle. And then we'll do it like this. So it doesn't really matter if you pour from one end to the other, from the middle outward. It's going to have a long time to catalyze, but you want to make sure just to try not to overfill it. So far, as I say, I made a couple of practice pieces, and then the one that I put on the guitar, and I always seem to have a tendency to pour them too thickly, which means I have to sand a bunch off the back when the product is done. This one here is just a practice piece also, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. But yeah, the less you pour, the less you'll be sanding off later. And you can see here that I'm actually pouring around the screw holes, and the fact that the screw holes are going to be covered up when I'm done means it's going to be thicker than the original when I'm done, but that's okay. We'll be sanding some off of the back of this one as well. I'm getting there. I've got a couple of drips on the table. They're black drips on the black table, so I have to be try not to stick my arm in that. So now we've poured this. This should be set on a level surface, and this is a point where a bubble level would come in handy, or as I say, you could set it on a concrete floor. If I hold it up and I move it like this, and move it fore and aft, back and forth, I can actually see the product. I can see where the high spots are, where it's high on one end or low on the other end. So if you haven't got a bubble level, you can just use paper shims or stack things under it, set it on a table, and just kind of watch it until it looks like it's level all the way around. So once this is done, you find a secure place for it, and you let it sit. You let it sit overnight. Actually, if you check it in an hour or so, it's probably going to be solid enough to not shift around. But I would definitely leave it and not play with it for a while. And I know, even though this is supposedly a high resolution camera, you're not going to be able to see the bubbles rising. But in this case, we've got raised letters on the original, and I can actually see a strip of bubbles along that plane. I can see where the bubbles are actually rising up out of that area. So this now has to sit, and there really isn't much else to show you. So this is the end of part 1 of the tutorial. I will come back when this is solidified, make another video of popping it out of the mold, cleaning it up, painting the letters on, and that'll be the end of it. So as you can see, it's a fairly simple process. It doesn't take very long, and trial and error. Just so you know, the materials, you'll probably look at spending on these products enough to make plenty of small plastic parts. These, I think, were about somewhere between $30 and $40. The mold release and conditioner, which I would say is optional, I think was maybe $8 to $10. These were about $5 a piece. And the resin, let's see, that resin was $18, and the catalyst was, I don't remember, but probably about $5, $6. These items you're looking at here, I think all told, were a little under $100. So if you were to not buy that, because you probably don't need it, and buy only the pigment colors you need, you're probably still looking at spending about $60, $70. But this stuff goes a long way. I've made, between pieces I've thrown away and pieces I've saved, I'd say I've made probably, oh God, about 4 of those. And actually, I did a large pick guard where I cut a piece of clear plexiglass and then poured a layer on it to back coat it. And I've used a little less than half of this. But the fact is, if you're just making this truss rod cover, this is gonna be a lifetime. It'll last you a long time. So that's it for now. When there's something else to show you, we'll start up the camera again and do it. Thanks for watching.